Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll try not to. Well, I'll keep it for sure for 30 minutes. But
Mhm.
you were my golden star for TIFF, to tell you the truth.
Oh,
I'm
thank
like,
you.
why did because I'm from Montreal. I'm born and raised in Montreal,
Uh-huh.
and I never knew about this story. And I am 40 something plus years old.
Yep, I was raised in Montreal in the Eastern Township. Same thing. I discovered all of this while, you know, being asked to do this film.
How
So
did yeah, how did you discover? How did that come about?
and then I realized that there was even more personal sort of connection. So Leslie Norville produced a series for Canada called Black Life Untold Stories. That was licensed by the CBC, and it's an 8-part series looking at the history of Black Canada. And she approached me. We knew each other. We both were living in Brooklyn at the time, Canadian filmmakers, and she was looking for Canadian directors, Black Canadian directors. And she actually asked me which one of these episodes seemed of interest. And I was just sort of in the midst of finishing up a project called Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni project. I don't know if you've heard of that documentary, and was sort of immersed in that period, late 60s, early 70s, and knew about the richness of the archival moments back then and how that could resonate to the present. And I said, oh, I want to do something around the Black Power movement in Canada and find out more about that and what, what was going on. And came to discover this Sir George Williams uprising affair.
Mhm.
And the more I dug, the more I realized, oh, these folks are my parents' generation. Not only are they my parents' generation, but they are friends of my parents, and some of them
Oh,
are family members
oh,
who
wow.
participated in the uprising. One of whom actually was, gave me my first job in college in Montreal. So, but never discussed this thing, this student movement, or even the Black Writers Conference. And I went to McGill University and did not know about the Black Writers Conference, and we were doing a lot of stuff on campus. I was at McGill during the anti-apartheid divestment movement. So we were out on campus pushing McGill to divest. And yet I never did that, that connection. So this has been sort of a discovery, a healing journey, because I kind of felt robbed, and I was looking for the courses on Black history and Caribbean history and all of that stuff at McGill, but this was never sort of mentioned. So this is sort of a reclamation, of filling in, of these gaps that that are really inside of holes, I feel, inside of us that um, that make us sort of feel like we don't belong. So this is a work of historical excavation, but also of community reclamation that this is about. And it's also about honoring these elders, these freedom fighters who risk their lives. Their lives were never the same after this. I don't
Mhm.
think they ever regret doing it, but it definitely changed the trajectory of their lives. So we want to honor that, honor the tradition of student movements, understanding that they are really the moral compass of our society, and we need to center what they have to say, to understand what it takes to build a better world. Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned your healing journey. I was watching it, and my parents are from Haiti. You have Haitian roots.
Yes.
I really related with Gisette Élisée Pierre Louis,
Yeah.
because so my mother passed away last year, August 19th,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of things that my mother never shared with me. And seeing, like, her sharing her story growing up in Haiti and then immigrating to Canada, it kind of like, I'm trying not to tear up, but
Yeah.
it made me think like, oh my gosh, is that what my mother was going through? Because there was a part where she was talking about when you come from like a privileged family, you're sent to us like what they think is like, oh, this is, it's this very prominent, great education. So I'm going to, send your kids to nun school, like schools that are taught by nuns. And I was like, huh, wondering if my mom went through this. And I'm,
Mhm.
like, just, it was just a lot of like, I felt like she put a little bit of a puzzle and closing in me understanding my mother. And also my mother also immigrated around this like early 70s, 70, between 70 72. So a
Mhm.
little bit after, because this happened around 1968, correct? Like the
Yes. Yes.
so yeah, so like so she came because as you know, with Duvalier and everything, and she was part of the student movement in Haiti. There was a lot of students that were protesting like him, and so
Mhm.
she left around that time, and and she told me a story, and I kind of related with one of the guys about the story of like how people would react to Black people in Montreal. And my mom was telling me when she immigrated, she was sitting in the bus, and there was a kid that started like almost like saw a ghost. You know what I mean? Like saw a monster. And it was my mother. The kid, this happens to be white, just never seen a Black person before, and was yelling and crying. And my mom was like, like she just looking back like what's happening. And she realizes like she laughed about it now, but she's
Yeah.
like, I was mortified. I was like, what's going on? Why is this kid reacting like this to me? Like not even to me, and realizing, oh, this kid's never seen a Black person before. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like our families went through so much.
Mhm.
We went through things. I mean, I left, uh, and I learned also through this film stories about my family sort of resistance to Duvalier.
Yeah,
Haiti that they had never shared with me. It was through Philippe Fils-Aimé that I learned things
oh
because he was a
wow.
neighbor of ours, and I was like, wow. I mean, we were really involved in the resistance movement. There, that we had to flee for our
Hmm.
lives. That's the one side of it. There's the trauma around that, and then there's coming here to a new space and facing discrimination. I mean, we went to New York City first, but we had family that went to the Montreal area. All my uncles went to Montreal directly instead. My father was the only one who left, and we eventually decided to leave New York and come to Quebec. And that was the first time I was called the N-word in the school playground. I had never, I was living in Queens and Flushing, Queens, and had never sort of, left Haiti very much a baby. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Got into fights and understood that there was this alienation, this marginalization, but also that we were building something very new in this province. The wave of immigration from the 60s into the 70s was a new thing for Quebecers. Not that there wasn't Black life, there had been Black life for generations, but the wave and increase in numbers was sort of shaking things up. And so that sort of pioneering work is painful work, you
It
know.
is.
Um, and so
Absolutely.
and so being able to, and I think that if I had been taught proper history of Black life in Canada, maybe my sense of belonging would have been stronger. The fact that our diaspora has been here since the Europeans have. When the Europeans came, the African descendants came with them.
Mhm.
And that slavery, existed side by side with the Underground Railroad.
Mhm.
How do we reconcile that? The
Oh yeah.
story, the story of Angelique, the enslaved woman in Old Montreal. This should be part of everyone's sort of collective consciousness of resistance, right? Because
Yep.
where there is oppression, there's always resistance. We don't take things sitting, lying down. And so understanding that lineage is so key. And I think powers that be understand the power of knowing your lineage and your history, which is why it's often the first thing that's under attack when the state wants to take control.
Yeah. You know what? While I was watching this, I was like, there's so much archival footage and first person accounts that are really powerful in True North. Was there any one story or piece of footage that really hit you the hardest during the production?
Well, there are two things I'll say for that are, and they both, and they both deal with Black female voices, because that was one thing we were very intentional about, because at the same time that, there was this huge sort of self-love and Black power sort of movement, there was misogyny embedded in that, right? And so the women who were involved, I don't think got the flowers that they should have, both in terms of the missing archive,
Yeah.
in terms of their contribution, as well as, understanding deeply their contributions. And so whenever we could, we would center that, both in terms of Brenda Dash and Josette Pierre-Louis. But the two, in terms of archival footages that were deeply moving, one is the conversation between the mother and the daughter at the end of the film, about, how Black folks got to Canada and what we want. That was extremely important because this woman, her name is Joan Jones. She was at the time the wife of Rocky Jones. And she was an instrumental leader in the Black Power movement in Canada, and is really the reason for the conscientization of Rocky Jones, who became a leader. I mean, that people call him the Malcolm X of Canada, but it is as a result of his awakening through his relationship with his wife, Joan Jones. And it was literally sort of impossible for us to really find footage where we could weave her story in. So when we discovered that footage that existed, the archive producer found footage of her, because we said, let's try to find whatever we can, talking to her daughter in such an interesting way and holding this baby in her arm as well. It was extremely important. So we got to find a place for this, So do we open with it? Do we close with it? And we found, the right place for it. It was really important. In terms of the sadness and pain, I think the archival material that was the most painful, and we even debated whether we would include it, is the conversation with the young 15-year-old woman who wears the pearls, and asking if she would
Oh, yeah.
would she prefer to be white. And it's just a very painful moment, but extremely important for us, for me anyway, to include it. So it's sort of a symbolic of the intensity of the racism that existed, both in terms of her responses, but also the intensity of the reporter not really respecting her answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something out of her, and she obviously is thinking, how do I please this guy?
Yeah, because there was a moment where I'm like, oh, I felt sad by her answer, but at the same time, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, yes, he was very forceful, and I'm like, I feel like she's just like, she's on survival mode. And she's like, you know what? This is a white dude asking me this question. So let me just, especially because of the time at the time. So you could see the dilemma that she's going through. You could for me, I felt it.
Like, she thought she had answered his question, but she had not answered it the way he wanted it. And he's like, let me ask a different way. So it was very painful. We debated about whether we should include it. And I said, no, this is a Black woman's story. It stands on its own. And we inserted it really between Josette and Brenda's story to sort of complement the complexity of the Black female life at the time. So
Can you tell me more about about Brenda Dash, like I was really fascinated. I mean, these two women, I was also fascinated by Brenda. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know we had our own version of Angela Davis in Canada.
Right.
Like I know, like it's sad, but it kind of like sucks. I'm comparing to like an American version, but that's
Mhm.
what popped in my head. Like, oh man, if I was a kid, especially because every single person that that you have in the movie are my parents. Like that's my parents' generation. And
Mhm.
so I felt a little bit like even that story we're talking about, the woman asking her, like, did you wish you were like, white or black? And I'm like, I related to that as a kid because there was still that lingering. Um,
Mhm.
I used to I used to take like clothing pins to hang, in Montreal we hang our clothes to dry. And I used to put it on my nose because I was like, maybe if I make my nose a little bit more, and so
Mhm.
I related to that's why I kind of related to her answer. But to go back to Brenda, yeah, I didn't know we had our own like version of
Yeah.
female movement and really like what can you tell me about Brenda? She has passed away last year, correct?
Yeah, she passed away in 2023 while we were in the edit. I think this is it's a bit of a travesty. There are a couple of things. A travesty that there's very little documentation of Brenda.
Right? Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's part of how her contributions were silenced, you know, except for, in the files, you see the RCMP file certainly had a file on her.
Hmm.
But do we really want to discover her through those files, And, very little moving image and even photographs of her. It was very difficult to find the pieces. So her interview was that much more important. We spent about 4 hours in conversation. And I feel like that interview should be part of our national archive and accessible to everyone, the whole interview, if people want to learn more about her. The other thing about her that, she suffered deeply from the state surveillance.
Yeah.
And she did a contrary migration. She fled Canada to the United States
Mm.
for some respite from the state apparatus. And so she made a life for herself in Los Angeles and then in Las Vegas, and that's where I interviewed her.
Oh,
This
okay.
is where she passed away in Las Vegas. Yeah.
Oh, I'm
So so this is why I feel like the film has multiple purposes. It becomes its own archive. Like if you want to hear about Brenda Dash, here's what we found of her. That photo, we have a couple of photographs of her. We have the interview of her, and then her account of what happened. And there's so much more to her growing up in Montreal that we just couldn't include, that have to do with her own experiences and relationship to the city and the country, that are part of the interview. So
Mhm.
definitely, we're trying to figure out, where can we house these interviews. And if you want to learn more, I would, stay tuned, hopefully, and you can have access to the full interview with her. But yeah, and she traveled across Canada and the United States
Wow.
in her Black Power tour, and as part of the tour to help those who were still in jail,
Mm.
money for their bail and all of that. But yeah, so there's another scene of her sitting next to Stokely Carmichael, but Stokely's got the mic the whole time. I kept asking, does she say anything in this interview or in this sort of press conference, or she's just sitting next to him? And there was nothing there. She didn't say a thing. So it's yeah,
I'm
it's
not gonna.
a measure of that period of time where women's contributions were essential but not documented. So
Mhm.
I turn to Sadia Hartman, who talks about critical fabulation, the scholar. She coined this idea of the afterlives of slavery, and the
Mm.
idea that we're still living through that, but that where there are gaps, we have the right to reinvent and reimagine and fabulate what, what is, 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 those things can look like. So in some ways, the film is a collage where we're stitching together what we have to create sort of, complex representations and stories of folks from our communities.
Mhm. I felt too in the film like I was very Rosie Douglas, again, someone else that I really did not know. And yeah, you mentioned Rocky Jones as like the Malcolm X of Canada. And I felt like, Rosie Douglas was that very strong voice as well, very Martin Luther King-ish, but like almost in between, sandwiched between Malcolm X and that Martin Luther King in
Yeah.
terms of his approach and
Yes.
as someone who does like digital strategy, and I was like, I see the strategy in him too. So I really appealed to that. He, like I said, he appears as, and he is a force in the film. What was important to you about highlighting his activism for today's audience?
Well, Rosie was a leader, a significant leader who basically risked his life and his career. He came from a prominent landowning family in Dominica. He actually came to Canada a conservative, sort of conservative force. That's how he knew Diefenbaker, who gave him the student visa directly, coming from Dominica. So he comes from an elite class in Dominica, and his experiences in Canada transformed him, and he was radicalized and sacrificed quite a bit for his convictions. And his story um, should serve as an inspiration. For those who don't know, yes, he served 2 years in jail in Canada because of the Sir George Williams Uprising. And after he left, continued solidarity work across Canada with First Nations people and building, more solidarity within the Black Power movement. And what the state felt it was he was dangerous that they decided to deport him. And he was deported to Dominica and then became a leader there. He became prime minister.
I saw, yeah,
Yeah. He
yeah,
became prime minister in Dominica. So he's definitely, a beacon of inspiration for us. Um, yes.
yeah. So, I know we only have like a few minutes, but
Mhm.
my last question, I have two more questions. I'm gonna try to squeeze them in
Okay.
there.
I'll try to make my response short.
So for Black Canadian creators today, many of whom are emerging voices, are students, what lessons from protests you feel, what lessons from these protests feel most urgent to carry forward today, especially with everything that's going on in the world right now?
Well, I feel like student protests, the tradition of student protests. You mentioned your mother, who
Yep.
was a student protester
Yep.
in Haiti that, led to her having to flee. I think that now I don't even want to say more than ever because it's always sort of been the case. We must have an uncompromising way of living our lives. I'm not saying we don't but there are certain, we don't, life is always about compromise, but there's a central truth that I feel like as an artist that I try to tune into in the choices that I make. For me, a sense of duty that fulfills me as an artist. And that I think in everything we do, we should center that and understand that we come from a long line, a long tradition of resistors that whose stories we've been deprived of,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is important for us to think about that reconnection and that we're not alone in this journey. And so I think for those who are up and coming, it's a difficult environment, but if we can be true to our convictions and not compromise where it's necessary not to, that we leave something behind for those who come after us. And as in the film, it's like it's about the journey. We may not necessarily get to that utopia, but the journey is equally important. And to live in it, to live a life that that is true to our convictions and to justice. I know it sounds a little cheesy, but
No,
I'm
not
just trying to
cheesy.
be unapologetic in the choices that I make because we have to live with them, you know? And yeah.
Spoken like a true Black Haitian Canadian.
Well, listen, you think about, our history, right? Our history, we've
Yep.
been paying for that uncompromising stance
I know.
for
It's like
centuries.
it's in our DNA. At this point, I'm
It
like,
is.
no.
I know. It is. It is.
Well, thank you so much for creating this piece, creating this art, creating this film. Honestly, it is educational. It's healing, and I know for a lot of kids of the generation of these beautiful people that you have that talks about their experience of what they did at this protest. I know it's going to heal so many and help us understand, like, oh, okay, because I know, that generation doesn't speak much to
No, that's
didn't tell us
exactly.
much. And so I have a strong feeling for us, for Generation Xers and some of the late millennials. It's going to be a very healing and answer a lot of questions about our parents.
Yeah.
Um, I know that for sure, but I hope too that when it's like, one of the things the kids do for Black History Month where they decorate the door with like Black
Mhm.
historical figures. I want to see Dr. Norman Cook and Brenda Dash and Josette
Yes.
and Philip and Dr. Rodney John. Like I want to see that, now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. That is, yes. Yes.
What's coming
Agreed.
up? What's upcoming for you? What's the next projects? Where can people find you or follow up with you in terms of just staying tuned in whatever else that you're doing next?
Sure. So the best way, well, there are a couple of ways. One is to join our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that comes out, gives updates on what we're up to. Our organization is called the RADA Studio, and RADA, which is it's a Haitian term of the lois of the
Yeah.
RADA.
Yeah.
And so radastudio.org,
Okay.
you can sign up through there. And we have to have as well a IG handle, which is Michèle _0608. And that's Michèle with one L, Michele. And RADA Studio NYC is the organizational IG handle as well. So yes, please sign up for our newsletter on the website.
I
And
am on it, and I hope everyone that's listening and watching is on that too. It'll be in the show notes and the description of this conversation. Michèle, again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the film. Like it was so, so good. Just amazing. And I'm sharing it with everybody and I'm sending it to like my kids' school. Like, hey,
oh,
for Black History Month, you should consider this on the door.
yes, learn about them, Brenda Dash. Learn about all of
Yes.
these freedom fighters, and yes, I like that. I like that.
Mhm.
We have to take control of our own history and bring it
Yeah,
to the classroom.
absolutely. And maybe perhaps will you be the first maybe to create the Haitian Revolution movie? I'm still waiting. I've
Oh,
been trying to get who's
no.
gonna create it? I know it's a lot.
Yeah,
So many
yeah,
stories.
because it's a complicated story.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is. It
yeah,
is. We can talk about it off air.
yeah, yeah. All right.
Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.